Okay, so let's pull it all together here at the end.
Easy.
Emanuel Swedenborg is the leading scientist, one of the top scientific minds in the world, embarks on this journey that he says is commissioned by God, where a huge part of it is studying the Bible and understanding the meaning that's in there.
Yep.
But this other big part of it is the journeying through the spiritual world, seeing heaven, seeing hell, experiencing it for himself. And he's so adamant that about telling people, I've experienced this myself. Listen,
Yes.
I'm not just thinking about this.
Yeah.
I'm not just putting together theology. I've experienced this myself. This is how he, right in the beginning of his first book, when he starts his spiritual phase, he says the following: I am well aware of the fact that many people will say that nobody can possibly speak to spirits or angels as long as he is living in the body, and that many will call it delusion. Some will say that I have spread these ideas around so as to win people's trust, while others will say something different again. But none of this deters me, for I have seen, I have heard, I have felt. So why does that matter? I think part of it is that what the Swedenborg phenomena was supposed to do, what he believes the mission he was given is, in part, is to get people aware that there is a spiritual part to reality. That's the thing that we're all sitting here and we all agree on exists, which is, physical world.
Physical world. We can agree on that at least.
Istanbul is in the physical world. Mars is in the physical world. That's just the shell of reality. And it's a shell that you're going to be leaving very soon. Like, relatively soon. Everybody spends a little bit of time here, but there's a whole, the big show, the main thing that's happening is this spiritual side of reality. And you need to know that. Otherwise, this won't make sense, this shell that we're in, and you won't live it right. You won't understand what's valuable and what you should be focusing your life on and how you should be. So you got to know that. I'm proof that it happens because I was able to see it. Like I'm experiencing what we all were supposed to be able to do before we kind of messed up the connection. There's something important about I have been there. I'm not just telling you what happened. I've been there. You're going to all see the same things I've seen just in a couple of decades when you cross over.
That's right. And a huge thing that's happened since then is millions of people having near-death experience, not that they didn't before, but there's sort of an awareness that people have these experiences. They write accounts, they post things on YouTube or wherever and say, I had this experience. I just heard one the other day from a woman who said the light was unbelievably bright but didn't hurt my eyes. Exactly the same thing Swedenborg said.
Yes.
And so, yeah, how powerful is that when you experience it, whether we experience it while we're still alive here in the flesh or at the point of passing on, that his experience is one of the foundation stones. And I don't think he's saying you have to believe it because it happened to me, but he's saying I believe it because I experienced it. And with some of these things, I experienced it over and over and over and over again. Spirits came closer. I got a toothache. They went away. The toothache went away. I experienced it over and over and over again. So I know that's how it works.
Yeah, and that he's holding up personal experience as the barometer. And he'll do that. He doesn't go around, I think, trying to get everyone to induce spiritual experiences.
No.
But he says...
He actually leaves almost nothing in the way of actual instructions of do this, do that, and you'll have a spiritual experience.
But to experience it for yourself before you can believe it is absolutely the way that spiritual things have to work, according to him. All the ideas that he presents in his works, he'll say, think for yourself whether or not something. He says that you can't actually, to be told religious things or spiritual things, only can ever go so far. You eventually have to throw those off and think for yourself, and only concepts that you, with your own rational mind and your own ethical judgment, believe to be true and good ever become a part of you. So everything, that whether or not you believe in God, whether or not you believe in these things like the afterlife he's telling you, it ultimately has to come down to your experience with those concepts and how they measure up against what you believe and understand from the Word. Whether or not you believe in the Word and whether or not you think it's the source of truth, you have to come to that conclusion for yourself in a state of freedom.
A scholar friend of mine who was really steeped in Swedenborg coined the phrase, look it up in yourself, which is basically what Swedenborg's quite often telling you to do. Look in yourself. Do you have some thoughts that can look down from those thoughts on other thoughts and comment on those other thoughts? Huh, isn't that interesting? So you experience that. You know what that's like. And look it up in yourself. Look it up in your own experience. And that's kind of unhackable, isn't it? People can tell you all sorts of stuff, but if you can look it up in yourself and you see that it actually, in your own private interior space, that it works that way, it's compelling.
Well, when people ask Jesus, who is he? He always says, this is exactly who I am. You have to believe it. or wait, no. Isn't it true that
who do people say
Pontius
I am? Who do you think I am?
Pilate is trying to say, are you the king? And he says,
that's right.
And finally he'll say, okay, it's as you said, but he won't venture it out. When he'll say,
you say so, or something. Yeah.
And
he won't give you.
Who do people say I am?
Direct answer.
Who do you think I am? What is your reading of what's the law say? What's your reading of it?
What's your reading of it?
And
right.
Thomas says, are you really you? Why don't you put your hands in my wounds and let me know what you think? That's the nature of God. Ultimately, you have to use your freedom and rationality in order to let anything in. I want to make this point too, that I was just recently reading a book where somebody, maybe we'll do a response video to it on one of our channels here, but where somebody's trying to say that Swedenborg denied the authority of the Bible because essentially he made up this inner meaning that can circumvent or dislodge the literal meaning. So he's just kind of making it say whatever he wants it to. Swedenborg is more Bible focused than anything anywhere ever. I mean, if you look at the doctrines of a lot of the Christian churches, they interact only with certain little parts of the Bible. There's a lot of doctrines and things that are, Dante influenced people, papal bulls influenced. There's a lot of stuff that has very little, if any, interaction with the Bible. Whereas Swedenborg, yes, he does this weird stuff like travel the afterlife, but everything is wrapped up in the Bible matters here, it matters here, it matters here. And I think that...
And he really goes for the whole Bible.
Yes.
Meaning that there's a lot of selectiveness. I think you're right, of where you fasten on certain proof passages or certain passages that lend themselves well to a certain interpretation. Yeah, let's grab that. Okay, what do you do with that bizarre story in the Old Testament about
building
Moses'
the tabernacle,
son being circumcised, or some weird, how does it work there? Because nobody's talking about that story.
How many sermons are done on that?
It's not a very pleasant story. Yeah, nobody does a sermon on that story.
I think what Swedenborg does is unite a bunch of movements that are in the world right now that wouldn't know how to talk to each other, but actually all come out of God. So we talked about this a little bit before, but you got the personal spiritual experience thing.
Yes.
Which is, again, it's exploded. Maybe people were always having these, but just couldn't talk about them, or just wasn't as much of a distribution of ideas and things as there is now. But you've got this
and the means of being able to publish only a few people could do books back in the day, but now you can post things and
got these extremely widespread spiritual experiences people have. Their near-death experiences, their out-of-body experiences, down to just like, I saw my grandmother right after she died. She told me that she'd see me later, and then I got a phone call that said that she had died. That stuff is, if you on your street, there's people who have had something like that.
Yeah.
It's just so widespread.
Yes.
So you have that, and you have the whole near-death experience community, and they're like, what is this window into the... So you've got that, and then you've got the Bible, and this huge number of people who believe strongly this is something special from God. This is somehow this is the center
sacred text
of everything. And Swedenborg says this is how those two things talk to each other. But then it's also the human body, the thing that we walk around and live in all the time. And as we understand more and more of it, we try to come up with ways to keep it alive and keep it from getting disease. That this is how that interfaces directly with the Bible, interfaces with personal spiritual experiences. And so it is also with mindfulness, Eastern thought. This is how all that stuff comes together, not in a way where you lose the character of one or the other, but this you see how these things are, they don't automatically, but they can intersect. And Swedenborg is that intersection point.
Yes, that's a really great comment, because the spiritual experience part is very friendly with the body. Like a lot of that connects with healing, chakras, whatever it might be. You know, those go together well. But then what is the Bible? You know, the Bible is so strange and so easy to reject in a way. That what is that? And what does the Bible have to do with your body? Nothing. And yet Swedenborg does. No, these are the same. It's so wild to read what he says about it,
yeah.
But they are the same. You're wearing it. You're wearing the Bible. We all have spiritual experiences. We all have bodies. And here's this text that everybody in the world, you know, there's hundreds of millions of copies go out every single year of this, the Bible, and it's increasing right now.
So it seems like Swedenborg has these weird experiences, goes into this weird thing, and makes these weird discoveries. But what he ends up doing is unweirding reality.
Yes.
Because it is weird that you have this whole slice of life that's the Bible. You have the experience of living in the human body. You have Eastern and Western religions. You have these spiritual experiences that have all these strange things. How is this all made by the same creator?
Yeah.
What Swedenborg does is say, this is how it all works. And now you can see a single, focused, benevolent, divine hand behind everything. And that's not weird. That's how it should be.
You know what I think you've just done?
What?
You've just come up with the most elusive thing in science today, the unified theory of everything.
That's it. Out of the weirdness emerges the spiritual